midnight frequencies. The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, but Nora Blackwood kept sipping it anyway, more out of habit than hope for caffeine. Outside the booth window of KWTF 88.7, the city slept under a blanket of orange streetlights and bad decisions. Inside, she spun vinyl records for insomniacs and third-shift workers, her voice a warm whisper threading through the static-filled darkness. That was Bowie's Space Oddity for anyone still floating out there in the void. She murmured into the microphone, her words drifting across empty highways and lonely bedrooms. It's 3:17 a.m. and you're listening to After Midnight with yours truly. Next up, we've got... Every piece of equipment in the studio erupted simultaneously. The mixing board's lights strobed in frantic patterns, the turntables spun backward, on their own, and the ancient computer terminal flickered between displays of weather data, stock prices, and what looked like star charts. The speakers shrieked with feedback that somehow formed harmonious chords, as if the machinery itself was trying to sing. Nora yanked off her headphones and stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her chair. What the hell? The chaos lasted exactly 17 seconds. She would remember that detail later, though she couldn't explain why. Then everything went silent. Not just quiet. Utterly, completely silent. Even the building's perpetual hum had stopped. The emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and through the booth's thick glass she could see that the transmission tower outside was dark for the first time in decades. She grabbed her phone. No signal. The landline was dead too. That's when she heard the sound from the transmission room. A soft thud, like someone had dropped a bag of sand. Nora hesitated, her hand hovering over the baseball bat she kept beside her desk for exactly these kinds of weird night shift emergencies. The thud came again, followed by what sounded distinctly like cursing in a language she'd never heard before. Against every survival instinct she possessed, Nora crept toward the transmission room. The door stood slightly ajar, revealing only darkness beyond. She pushed it open with the bat's tip and stepped inside. A woman sat slumped against the massive transmitter, one hand pressed to her shoulder where something dark stained her clothes. Her hair was an unusual silver black that seemed to move independently of any breeze, and when she looked up, her eyes were violet. Not blue violet or purple, but actual violet like crushed flowers. "Please," the woman said, her accent unplaceable, but melodic. "Don't call anyone. They'll find me if you do." Nora kept the bat raised. "Who will find you? And how did you get in here? This place is locked down tighter than..." "I fell." The woman gestured weakly toward the ceiling. "Through your roof. I'm sorry about the damage." Nora glanced up. The acoustic tiles were intact. No holes. No debris. "Lady, I think you might have hit your head. There's no..." "Look at your equipment," the woman interrupted. Nora did. Every LED on the transmitter was pulsing in perfect synchronization, creating patterns that shouldn't be possible with analog hardware. The needles on the VU meters danced to rhythms that had nothing to do with audio levels, and the air itself felt different, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. "Okay," Nora said slowly, lowering the bat slightly. "Let's say I believe you fell through my roof without leaving a hole. Who exactly is hunting you?" "The woman." "Zeph," she said. Her name was struggled to stand. Her shoulder was definitely injured, but the wound didn't look like anything Nora recognized. It was too clean, too precise, like it had been made by something that cauterized as it cut. "The Meridian Collective," Zeph said. "They've been tracking me across 17 systems. I thought I'd lost them, but they found my energy trail." She touched the transmitter and the lights responded, shifting from red to blue to colors that didn't have names. "Your broadcasting equipment is crude, but it's powerful. It created interference in their scans, gave me a place to hide." 17 systems, Nora repeated. "Like solar systems?" Zeph nodded. "I'm not from here." Before Nora could process that statement fully, headlights swept across the parking lot outside, not the warm yellow of regular cars, These were cold white, too bright, and they moved with mechanical precision. 3 black vehicles arranged themselves in a perfect triangle around the building. "They found me," Zeph whispered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring this to your doorstep." Nora peered through the transmission room's small window. Men in dark suits were getting out of the vehicles, each carrying what looked like scanning equipment. They moved with unsettling coordination, like dancers following choreography only they could hear. "What do they want with you?" "I took something from them. Information they can't afford to let spread." Zeph's eyes reflected the pulsing lights of the equipment. "I was trying to warn the other settlements, the free colonies, but I miscalculated the jump, ended up here instead." One of the suited men walked directly to the building's front door and stood there, not knocking, not trying the handle, just waiting. Another positioned himself at the rear exit. The third remained by the vehicles, sweeping his scanner in slow arcs. "There's a basement," Nora said suddenly. "Old fallout shelter from the Cold War. The access is hidden behind the water heater." Zeph shook her head. "They'll detect me anywhere in this building. The quantum signature is too strong." "Quantum? What now?" "I exist partially outside your space-time continuum," Zeph explained, as if this was perfectly normal. "It's how we travel, between stars, but it makes us easy to track. Unless—" She looked at the transmitter with new interest, her violet eyes narrowing in calculation. "Unless what?" "Your broadcast tower. If I could modulate the signal, create an interference pattern, it might mask my signature long enough for them to move on." Nora stared at her. "You want to hack my radio station to hide from space cops?" "Essentially, yes." The front door's locks began clicking open on their own. No key turned, no picks used. The mechanisms simply decided to cooperate with whoever was outside. "Do it," Nora said. Zeph placed both hands on the transmitter. The injury to her shoulder seemed forgotten as she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. The equipment responded immediately. Lights cascading in complex patterns, dials spinning to positions that shouldn't have been possible. The air grew thick with static electricity, and Nora's hair began to stand on end. Through the buildings, speakers which hadn't been connected to anything, came the sound of music, but not any music Nora had ever heard. It was like listening to stellar radiation translated into melody, vast and alien and beautiful. The suited men outside stopped moving. They stood perfectly still for several long seconds, their scanners beeping frantically. Then, as one, they turned and walked back to their vehicles. The headlights swept away into the night, leaving only darkness and the lingering scent of ozone. Zeph slumped against the transmitter, exhausted. That won't hold them for long, maybe a few hours. Then what? Then I run again. I always run. Nora looked at this strange woman with her impossible eyes and silver hair, at the equipment that now hummed with alien harmonies, at the reality she'd stumbled into at 3:17 a.m. on what should have been an ordinary Wednesday. What if you didn't have to run alone this time? Zeph met her gaze, surprise flickering across her features. Outside, the radio tower began to broadcast again, sending signals into the void, some carrying music for night shift workers, others carrying hopes for freedom among the stars. Static and starlight. The abandoned Arecibo-style radio telescope squatted in the desert like a sleeping giant's ear, its massive dish pointed toward stars that held secrets Nora never imagined existed. 48 hours had passed since her world turned inside out, and she was beginning to understand that running from interdimensional bounty hunters was less glamorous and more terrifying than science fiction made it seem. "This place has been dead for 15 years, she said, steering her battered Honda through the facility's rusted gates. "Budget cuts killed the funding. Perfect place to hide, assuming your space cop friends don't have magic building detectors." Zephy sat in the passenger seat, her violet eyes scanning the horizon with predatory alertness. The wound on her shoulder had healed with impossible speed, leaving only a faint silver mark that looked more like jewelry than scar tissue. They track quantum signatures, not architecture. But Agent Voss is persistent. He won't stop scanning until he finds me. Agent Voss sounds friendly. He's efficient, Zeph said grimly. The collective doesn't send negotiators. They parked beside the main control building, its concrete walls bleached white by decades of desert sun. Nora had called in sick to the radio station, citing food poisoning, which wasn't entirely untrue. Learning that aliens were real had definitely upset her digestive system. Inside the facility, emergency lighting cast everything in amber shadows. Dust motes danced in the air like microscopic satellites. Zeph moved through the abandoned equipment with familiarity that made Nora wonder how many dead civilizations she'd explored. This will work, Zeph murmured, running her hands over a control panel that should have been powerless. Under her touch, LEDs began to flicker to life. Your species builds surprisingly robust communication arrays. Thanks, I guess. So what exactly are we doing here? Sending a message, Zeph said, her fingers dancing over controls that responded despite having no electrical connection. There are 17 refugee settlements scattered across this galactic arm. They need to know the collective has expanded their hunting protocols. Nora watched lights bloom across dormant systems, feeling reality bend around Zeph's presence like space-time was made of warm plastic. What did you steal from them that's worth chasing you across the universe? Zeph paused, her expression growing distant. Proof that the collective isn't what they claim to be. They present themselves as peacekeepers, maintaining order among the star systems. But I discovered their real purpose. She touched a memory crystal embedded in her throat, just below the hollow. They're harvesters. Every civilization they liberate gets strip-mined for genetic material, consciousness patterns, cultural data. They're building something with it, a composite intelligence made from thousands of absorbed species. Jesus, like the Borg? I don't know this Borg, but yes, probably similar. The difference is the collective leaves the bodies behind. Makes it look like natural disasters, plagues, societal collapse. No one realizes the civilizations were murdered. Nora felt cold despite the desert heat. And Earth? Next on their list. Your planet's biodiversity and cultural complexity make you valuable raw material. Zeph's hands moved faster across the controls, bringing more systems online. That's why I have to warn the settlements. Alone we can only run and hide. Together we might be able to fight. The massive radio dish outside began to move with a grinding mechanical whine, swiveling toward a section of sky that looked empty to Nora's eyes, but clearly held significance for Zeph. Power hummed through cables that should have been dead, and the air itself seemed to thicken with potential energy. That's when Nora's phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Service was spotty in the desert, and she'd told everyone she was sick. But the caller ID made her heart skip. Riley Chen, her 22-year-old brother, the computer science prodigy who could hack everything except his own social anxiety. Nora? Riley's voice crackled through static. Where are you? There are weird guys asking about you at the station. What kind of weird guys? The kind that wear suits in 100-degree weather and don't blink enough. They keep asking about anomalous transmissions and whether you've had contact with non-standard entities. I think they might be feds. Nora met Zeph's gaze. The alien woman's expression had gone cold and calculating. Riley, listen to me carefully. Leave. Right now. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere predictable. Find somewhere public with lots of people and stay there. Nora, you're scaring me. What's going on? Before she could answer, the phone line filled with a sound like glass breaking underwater. The call cut off, replaced by perfect silence. They found your connection to me, Zeph said. The collective doesn't leave loose ends. Nora's hands shook as she tried calling Riley back. No signal. The phone was completely dead, its screen black, despite being fully charged an hour ago. Can they hurt him? Not directly. Harming uninvolved natives draws attention from planetary authorities. But they'll monitor him, use him as leverage if necessary. Zeph's fingers flew over the controls, bringing the radio telescope to full power. I need 3 more minutes to establish the quantum link. We don't have 3 minutes. Nora pointed through the control room's windows. In the distance, dust clouds were rising from the desert floor, vehicles approaching at high speed. How did they find us so fast? I underestimated Voss. Zeph's jaw tightened. He must have triangulated our position from the interference pattern at your radio station. The vehicles resolved into view, the same 3 black cars from the night before, moving in perfect formation across the hardpan. They stopped at the facility's entrance and figures emerged with mechanical precision. Agent Voss was taller than his subordinates, his face angular and symmetrical in a way that suggested surgical modification rather than genetics. When he looked directly at the control building, Nora felt an irrational urge to hide behind the furniture. Broadcasting in 90 seconds, Zeph announced, her hands dancing over increasingly complex control sequences. The quantum entanglement is almost stable. What if they get here first? Then a lot of people die and Earth gets added to the harvest schedule ahead of time. Nora grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. Through the windows, she watched Voss and his team spread out around the building. They moved like hunters who'd cornered their prey and were simply deciding how to make the kill. 60 seconds, Zeph said. The building's lights went out. Emergency power failed. Even the amber glow from the control panels faded to black. In the sudden darkness, Nora heard footsteps on concrete, moving with the confidence of people who could see perfectly in the dark. "They're inside," she whispered. 30 seconds. Zeph's voice was steady, but her hands were glowing now, violet light streaming from her fingertips into the control systems. "The quantum field is fluctuating. I need to maintain contact." A door opened somewhere in the building, then another. The footsteps were getting closer, accompanied by a sound like electronic crickets, scanning equipment sweeping for their location. 15 seconds. Nora positioned herself between Zeph and the control room door, fire extinguisher raised. It felt pathetically inadequate against whatever technology the collective possessed, but it was all she had. The door opened. Agent Voss stepped through, flanked by 2 subordinates carrying devices that hummed with barely contained energy. His too-perfect face wore an expression of mild disappointment, like a teacher who'd caught students cheating on an exam. "Zeph, of the Meridian Resistance," he said, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested it was being translated in real time. "You will cease your transmission and surrender the stolen data matrix." 10 seconds, Zeph whispered. Voss raised his scanner. "Your human ally will be processed for complicity if you do not comply immediately." Nora stepped forward, surprising herself with her steadiness. "She's not going anywhere with you." 5 seconds. Voss's subordinates raised their weapons. Sleek, devices that looked like they could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. The electronic cricket sounds intensified as their scanners locked onto Zeph's position. 3, 2. The radio telescope's massive dish turned 1 final degree, clicking into perfect alignment with its target constellation. Every dead system in the facility roared to life simultaneously, power flowing through circuits that shouldn't have been able to carry it. The building shook as energies beyond human comprehension coursed through equipment designed for much simpler tasks. Zeph's eyes blazed with violet fire as she became a living conduit between Earth's technology and quantum frequencies that spanned galaxies. Her voice when she spoke was layered with harmonics that made the air itself sing. "This is Zeph of the Meridian Resistance. The collective has found us. They're expanding the harvest to include Sol 3. Prepare for Voss fired." The beam struck Zeph in the chest and she screamed, not in pain but in fury. The quantum transmission continued, amplified by her agony, carrying her warning across impossible distances at faster-than-light speeds. The radio telescope's dish began to glow white-hot as energies it was never meant to handle poured through its structure. Nora swung the fire extinguisher at Voss's head. It connected with a satisfying crunch, sending him staggering backward. His weapon clattered across the floor and she dove for it, not knowing how to use it but determined to try. "Transmission complete," Zeph gasped, collapsing against the control panel. "The settlements know. They'll be ready." Voss recovered, his perfect face now marred by a distinctly human-looking bruise. "You have doomed this world," he snarled. "The harvest will begin immediately. Your species will be processed within the cycle. Good. Zeph smiled, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Gives them time to prepare a welcome party. The radio telescope's dish finally gave up under the impossible energies, exploding in a shower of white-hot metal fragments. The building shook. Windows shattered, and every piece of electronic equipment died in showers of sparks. In the sudden darkness, Nora heard the whine of charging weapons. She closed her eyes and waited for vaporization. Instead, she heard the distinctive sound of her brother's voice. "Hey, assholes!" Riley stood in the doorway, holding what looked like a modified cell phone booster and wearing the kind of manic grin that meant he'd done something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Electromagnetic pulse, courtesy of Radio Shack and YouTube University. Your fancy toys don't like analog interference, do they? Voss's weapons were dead, their sleek surfaces dark and lifeless. The agent himself seemed unaffected, but his subordinates were moving sluggishly, like machines, running on backup power. "Run," Riley suggested cheerfully. "I can only scramble their gear for about 60 seconds. They ran, through the facility's corridors, past defunct equipment and abandoned dreams, toward Nora's Honda and whatever came next. Behind them, Agent Voss shouted orders in languages that predated human civilization. As they drove away from the burning radio telescope, Zeph leaned against the passenger window, her violet eyes reflecting the flames. "It's done," she said quietly. "The message got through. The settlements will unite, and when the collective comes for Earth, they'll find us ready." Nora glanced at her brother in the rearview mirror. "Riley, how did you find us?" "Followed the electromagnetic anomalies. Also, you're predictable. When you're stressed, you always head for abandoned places." He grinned. "Plus, alien tech leaves really distinctive interference patterns if you know what to look for." "You're taking this remarkably well," Zeph observed. Riley shrugged. "I've been waiting my whole life for something this cool to happen. Besides," he added, pulling out his phone to show a screen full of code, "I managed to copy some of their scanning protocols while my EMP was frying their systems. Want to help me figure out how to build better defenses?" Zeph smiled, the first genuine expression of hope Nora had seen from her. "I think I'd like that." In the distance, the burning radio telescope sent one final signal into the night sky. Not an alien quantum transmission this time, but simple radio waves carrying an old song about space oddities and Major Toms, drifting towards stars that would never be the same.